So imagine you've built this perfect intellectual fortress for your beliefs. It's solid, it's logical, it makes sense. But then, decades later, you realize it's actually a prison. Well, today we're going to talk about a thinker who had to escape his own certainty, not just once, but twice. His name was Francis Schaeffer.
You know, what happens when the answers you've always believed in just suddenly feel empty? I mean, what do you do when the very foundation of your beliefs starts to feel hollow? Like you've built this beautiful house, but there's nobody living inside.
Well, the thinker we're talking about, Francis Schaeffer, he faced that exact problem. And for him, this wasn't just some fleeting doubt. No, it was a full-blown crisis of conviction. And it hit him twice, forcing him to literally tear down and rebuild everything he thought he knew from the ground up.
So to really get a handle on the crisis that almost broke him, we've got to go back and understand the conviction that built him in the first place. This was his first conversion, a young man's search for answers that would actually hold up under pressure.
See, as a teenager, Schaeffer was just kind of adrift. The Christianity he saw around him felt pretty superficial, and philosophy, well, that just left him with more questions than answers. So he became an agnostic. But then, at 18, he did something pretty radical. He just decided to read the Bible for himself, from page 1, Genesis. And for 6 straight months, that's what he did. By the end of that deep dive, he was completely convinced.
The way he saw it, the world of ideas was just chaos. Philosophy felt like a pile of broken pillars, all these disconnected theories about reality, knowledge, morality, and none of them fit together. But in the Bible, he felt he discovered the single, unified structure, a worldview where everything connected, from the biggest questions about the universe right down to the meaning of a single human life.
And this is the key thing to understand right here. His first conversion wasn't about feelings, it was all about thinking. He really believed he'd found a system with logical, coherent answers to life's biggest questions. At a time when a lot of people were approaching faith as this subjective experience, Schaeffer was asking a totally different question. Is it true? Like, objectively true? And for him, the answer was a huge yes. But that intellectual certainty, that was just chapter 1. Years later, after he became a pastor and built his entire life on that logical foundation, it all started to crumble. This was his second crisis. And this time, he wasn't just searching for answers, he was searching for reality.
Okay, so let's jump forward 2 decades. The year is 1951. Now on the outside, Schaeffer looks like he has it all together. He's a respected pastor, a well-known defender of the faith, but inside, he's completely falling apart.
He eventually put his finger on the problem with this just devastating phrase, loveless orthodoxy. He looked around and he included himself in this. And he saw people who had all the right answers, right? All the correct doctrines, checked all the boxes. But there was no genuine love. That intellectual truth he'd built his whole life on, it suddenly felt cold, sterile, and just unreal.
This disillusionment got so bad that he took a really drastic step. He actually retreated to a chalet in Switzerland, climbed up into a hayloft, and for months, he just forced himself to re-examine everything, from scratch. He was right on the edge of just abandoning it all and going back to being an agnostic like he was in high school.
But he didn't give up. Out of that incredibly intense period of doubt, he managed to rebuild his faith. But this time, it was on a totally different foundation.
And this table right here, this really gets to the heart of his entire journey. Look at this. His first crisis, back in 1930, that was all about a lack of answers. The big question for him was, is it true? And the solution he found was intellectual truth. But the second crisis, in 1951, that was about a lack of reality. The question changed. It became so much more personal. Is it real? And this time, the solution couldn't just be an idea. It had to be something you could actually experience.
So, how did he rebuild? Well, up in that hayloft, he went back to the Bible. But this time, he was looking for something different. He focused on passages that didn't just promise forgiveness, but promised a real, present power to overcome your own personal failings. And he came to this conclusion. The ultimate proof of his faith wasn't how logical it was, but whether it could produce what he called substantial healing. Real, observable, positive change in the messy parts of life, in relationships, in your own character, all powered by the Holy Spirit.
This breakthrough really led him to this new focus that he called true spirituality. And for Schaeffer, this meant that faith could never just be a checklist of correct beliefs you tick off. No way. It had to be a visible, lived-out reality. You had to actually see its effects in a person's compassion and their ability to change. It wasn't about being perfect. It was about plugging into a real, moment-by-moment source of power.
And this second, much deeper conversion, it didn't just change Schaeffer's inner life. It totally reshaped his life's work and ended up leaving this incredible lasting legacy.
So he and his wife, they opened up their home in Switzerland and called it L'Abri. That's French for the shelter. It became this place where anyone with doubts could come and ask their absolute hardest questions and not be judged for it. His own life basically became this model for the idea that honest, really tough doubt isn't the enemy of faith, but it's often the path to a way stronger conviction. He just insisted that truth had to be shown through love, and by doing that, he inspired a whole generation to think deeply about their faith and actually engage with the culture around them.
So Schaeffer's whole journey, from asking, is it true, to is it real, it really leaves us with this powerful idea to think about. That maybe, just maybe, true conviction isn't about the absence of doubt at all. Maybe it's the result of wrestling with it. It kind of suggests that the strongest beliefs we can have aren't the ones we've never questioned, but the ones that have survived our absolute toughest questions.